Okay, excellent. So, like I said, super excited to be back at Columbia. I'll be in person. Hopefully next year, we'll be back, or virtual. Hopefully next year we'll be back in person. But really, today's session is for you guys. I'll go through a little bit of my own background, and we'll kind of go through some slides that we present to a lot of our schools here. But I know a lot of you on the call today are thinking about recruitment, thinking about career options. It gets earlier and earlier each year, right? So kind of what are the things that you should be doing? So really use this session for your own advantage. One thing I'll say from the Elevate front, you'll kind of hear a little bit more about Elevate in a second, but I started about a year or 2 years ago now. And it's really become the largest sort of network of universities, all the way from undergrad all the way to post MBA. So you'll be sort of everything that you'll see as you go through your career, whether it's going into finance careers, whether it's going to consulting, whether it's going to entrepreneurship, fintech, et cetera, all the way through now until probably 10 years from now, where with a lot of connection points for you to be successful in each stage of the journey. And really my motivation to start that was to provide a professional's view on how to be successful in the industry. So we've brought on probably hundreds of professionals at this point, and we'll continue to bring those on for you guys as well. And so I'll just start off by saying that if anyone, I know a bunch of you guys have already connected on LinkedIn, so I will promise to reconnect with you guys after the session. But for anyone who wants to and sort of reach out afterwards with any questions or whatever, feel free to do it. Like I mentioned, the session is for you guys. So let's sort of jump in to our presentation, and you guys should use the hands, the raise hands function to sort of ask questions and so on. So let me pull up our presentation here so that we can present it. Share screen. Okay, cool. Can you guys see this, everybody? Okay, cool, excellent. So we'll go through this pretty expeditiously. So today, I'll just give you guys a quick background. I spent the majority of my career in investment in private equity. I actually was first-gen immigrant in the US. I moved to this country when I was in middle school, didn't speak English or anything, didn't have any family in finance. And so as I look back sort of 10, 15 years, pretty incredible journey through the landscape. And that's to show you guys that, if there's something that you enjoy or something you want to do or something you want to really be successful at, don't let things like, oh, I don't know anyone here, I don't have any family here, I don't have, things like that hold you guys back. I really want everyone on this call to really shoot for the stars in identifying, what you think your goals are. And your goals need not be, hey, I want to be, senior in private equity, or I want to be this. I think you guys, we all should figure out what those are for ourselves and really go after accomplishing them. So quick background about myself. I started at Goldman Sachs in our investment banking group in 2012. I started in investment banking. You guys look back, close to eight plus years now, I guess, and actually 10 years now, the financial industry was very different. So I started off in the financial institutions group. And so, financial institutions was going through, an incredible change, right? As is technology, healthcare, and some of these other financials as well now with COVID. So I encourage you to find and identify industries where you think there's a lot of, movement going on and where you can be part of that change. And so for me, that worked out really, really well. My first couple of years, I ended up being the lead associate on sort of the largest IPO since Facebook, the largest M&A divestiture that we'd seen at Goldman, and largest kind of split off deal that we'd done. So it's sort of, you got lucky, right place, right time, but also really try to seek out challenging opportunities that you can be a part of. So I spent a couple of years in banking, as a lot of folks would do. I moved over to private equity in a few years. I joined actually Goldman's own private equity fund, which is about $100 billion fund. I was vice president there. And then soon after that, I was director. I joined Varte Partners as director to help with the global PE business. And kind of this was, sort of in my late 20s. So the first sort of 5 to 6 years of my career was very accelerated in some sense. And I'll talk to you guys through a little bit about what helped in some of those things. Also at Goldman, I took on a bunch of leadership roles, and that's something else I encourage a lot of folks here to do. CFIG is a great example. It's a premier organization in Colombia, not just in Colombia, but across all of the universities we work with, but take leadership roles up on where you are, it allows you to sort of see things from a strategic perspective, and also allows you to make an impact on a lot of people around you that will then sort of pay dividends, right, in the future. So at Goldman, I was put in charge as sort of chief of staff within our investment banking big group, which meant to do all the people-driven initiatives and business-driven initiatives, so business strategy, revenue planning, et cetera. So that was a really super cool role that I had to take on in addition to sort of my day job in investment banking. I was also the recruitment lead for both analysts and associates for several years, as well as promotion committees, et cetera. So feel free to ask me any questions about what does it mean to get in, but also be successful in some of these firms. I will give you guys a quick background on Elevate. Like Megan mentioned, we're super excited to be partnered with Elevate amongst about 100 clubs now across North America. And this is really a career-long platform, resource platform, networking platform, learning platform, recruitment platform, investing platform. We kind of building out all these different functionalities for careers in banking, PE, VC, growth equity, fintech, and hedge funds, right? So that's kind of the landscape of things we're looking at. We're probably going to expand to technology at some point. But really, there's four main functions. One is networking. So we have a very robust networking platform called Connect. Megan and Winston will share the information about that going forward. I think everyone from Colombia last year had a great time on it. I think we had over 2,000 meetings that people had on there. That's an opportunity for you guys to meet other individuals who are peers, near peers, et cetera. We also, on the professional side, organize, I would say, anywhere from 3 to 4 events every month, maybe every couple months, with lots of professionals, right? We have one with the Goldman team, which is a really strong, Colombia representation this Saturday. Next week, we're doing a restructuring sort of boot camp with 2 bankers from Houlihan and Evercore. And then following that, we have a growth equity event and so on and so forth. So you guys will be, in the loop on all this stuff. Those are all free. It's just sort of for your learning. It's all for people to learn and excel in their careers. We obviously have a learning platform. We have this thing called the Academy, where we have about all these videos that we have these professionals. There's about 500 videos from like 100 different firms. You can go on there free, go check it out, learn. It's really empower you guys to be successful. Our recruitment platform, we're building this out as well. I'll partner with a lot of the top firms in private equity, growth equity. You'll be hearing more about that soon. An investment platform, this is kind of giving our students an opportunity to sit on investment committee and really evaluate deals as they see. This is more geared towards private equity and growth equity. So that will be coming out in the next few months. Again, it's a great opportunity for you guys to sit and actually interact with professionals and do the job, as you say. So on this front, like I said, we're partnered with the top 30 universities, including Columbia. Columbia's been a long-standing part of ours, along with all of your peers. Also on the MBA side, we're partnered very close with CBS and all these different universities. You'll hear more about this later. Just examples, I think we've had on about 75 or 80 firms. These are just examples of different firms and professionals we've had on. I think, if you guys are curious, you can obviously learn more. There's tons of stuff on our website. I'm not going to go into this in a lot of detail. I will share some of these links where we have tons of just videos from professionals and stuff. You guys should check it out. So, okay, well, we kind of jump in. I saw from the people that had signed up, we had, a good mix of, I'd say second years and third years, and some, very ambitious first years, I suppose, as well. And so I think, look, the way I think about it when I go to this would be, we've done about 100 of these events at all of these different undergrad universities. I think the first question that people ask me is like, what should I be doing at different points in my journey, right? As I think about sort of undergrad all the way post. Look, I think if you guys are a first year, or if there are folks on this call who are first years, the first step you should be taking is obviously joining organizations like this, but really explore, right? So figure out, there's just so many amazing options for people to explore and do as a career, or frankly, even as an internship. So the first place I would start is really use the time. Well, first get situated in school, but then beyond that, explore the different options that you have out there. Whether we like it or not, GPA and things like that are important when it comes to, evaluation. So doing a really good job in school is important. And then getting involved on campus, right? We talked about that. If you're a second year, which is where the bulk of my audience is here today, we'll get into this in a lot more detail. Your focus should be around getting a sophomore year internship, your second year internship. Then your focus should be very quickly, which is right about now, on networking for your third year internship, right? Because the process will be starting in a month or so. It's actually frankly started for some of these firms. And then sort of really deeper career exploration, right? Just because everyone around you is exploring a career does not necessarily make it the right career for yourself. And I will keep saying this because guess what, team? That's the same message when I go to our MBAs that I'll share with them, because I think the people that really spend the time to introspect and learn and figure out what they like and don't like are the ones that end up most successful in their careers, right? So, and we'll get back to that in a second. And then obviously really focusing on networking and interviewing, recruiting and interviewing. And that is a specialized skill set. We'll get into that in a second. You may be the strongest candidate on paper, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, you're going to be extremely successful in interviews. So there's an art behind how to communicate your stories, how to present your stories well, et cetera. And we'll get to that in a second. And obviously there's more, other things later on. If folks are interested, you guys, when you come, hear us as an analyst or associate, we'll get into all this other stuff that we'll get to in a second. So what are the key principles behind recruiting? By the way, folks should feel free to ask questions and or share them, raise your hand, et cetera. Because, I want to try to make this really interactive. It would be a little bit easier if it wasn't in person, I suppose. But, I think the 5 main things to me, as I've sort of already highlighted in recruiting, are, university. So coming from Columbia, it's sort of a double-edged sword, right? Phenomenal school, phenomenal, location, phenomenal set of alumni that are out there, but probably, you have to do a little bit more, right, to stand out in some sense. And we'll get to that in a second, as it relates to some of these things, which everyone here is obviously fully capable of. And in that lens, I would say, really start identifying how each of these firms, and let's just take banking and consulting is going to be a little bit very similar, private equity is going to be a little bit similar, but let's sort of focus on, investment banking and related careers. Most of these firms have school-specific recruiting teams, especially with Columbia. So one thing I would encourage you guys to start doing already is try to find mentors who are third years or fourth years who've gone through the process and start, kind of networking with them and say, hey, Winston, or, I'm calling you guys out here, but whoever's the third, fourth year here, can you guys, would love to sort of hear about your experience through the process, what worked, what didn't. I think the trick there is you shouldn't be coming off as super transactional, right? Because you can't just be like, hey, I just want all this information. Can you just give it to me? And then they're like, well, I have no incentive to help you. So I think you have to sort of, kind of put it in a way, be like, hey, this is my background. This is why I'm specifically interested in what you did. And that resonated with me. So can you help me out in this process? And, or help me kind of figure out what are the most important things in this process. So I'd start with sort of upperclassmen and then gravitate or sort of, elevate to sort of the first year analyst, second year analyst, because every firm, right? I think about, Goldman, and we had a Columbia specific recruiting team, and there was an MD that managed that. And then there was sort of, maybe 20 to 30 analysts, associates, et cetera, who are Columbia alums, most likely, who are part of that team, who do the resume reviews, who do all the networking calls and all that stuff. So really important for you all to connect. I mean, a great place to connect is CFIG alums, right? So start with that list and go out to them and say, hey, I'm in CFIG, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And we'll get to a little bit on how you should position your messaging to be most effective, but start with that and say, hey, I'm also in CFIG. I'm looking at this sector, or I'm doing this sector update or whatever. I noticed you were in the club and I noticed you were at X, Y, and Z bank. I'm really, really interested in this bank. Give a little bit more, right? I'm really interested in the healthcare group because of X, Y, and Z. I noticed you're in that group. I'd love to learn more. Can we set up a quick call, right? So I think, again, we'll get into sort of the tricks of the trader, and trust me, on Saturday, we like I said, we have a Goldman banker on, and I think we may get another banker on, just I can't confirm yet, but we're going to get into like what makes people like respond to emails, what makes people not respond to emails, all that stuff. Again, this is something networking is something you'll be working on your career long. So I want you guys to get really good at it. So anyway, that's the first piece. We'll come back to that. Second piece is academic performance. Like I said, necessary evil, right? Just because like you had to get into college, you had to get a good SAT or whatever, GPA in school. A lot of these banks do have cutoffs. So it's 3.7, usually 3.6, depending. If you have extraneous circumstances or something that happened, you can always explain it away. Again, networking can overcome some of this, but just do a good job in school. And also have a little bit of a story. We always ask students, hey, why did you pick art history? Why did you pick, philosophy? Why did you pick economics? Why did you pick finance, or whatever the major that they pick? I want to see some level of enthusiasm. I want to see some level of, of like passion, because that, like, same way I ask you, why do you want to do healthcare, private equity, or healthcare investment banking? I want to see that same passion of, hey, this is something I really enjoy doing and I want to do this, right? So I think really, really important to have some of those stories aligned. The third big thing, I know this is sort of the elephant in the room, is you got to start building your experience, right? So, whether we like it or not, these careers are sort of laddered, where you go do one thing, then do something else and do something else. So, as a first year, I would say less important to get an internship that is directly related to the career that you want to go into. But as a second year, it starts becoming more important. And I'll give you guys a few tricks in a second on kind of what would work in that context on how to get those internships. But being in New York, being at Columbia, there's a lot of avenues you all should be able to pursue there. And then the key thing here is to connect them all together. Okay. So saying, hey, I did this my freshman year, I've been doing this my sophomore year. That's how those two are related to what I want to do next. And this is why I'm interviewing for your firm. So you sort of want to see that, that sort of, that progression. And then, by the way, can you guys all see the screen? I just want to make sure.
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. One of these events, sometimes like they don't see it, and then people are like, "What are you talking about?" So okay, let's. So the fourth thing, networking. Again, we'll spend a lot of time on this today. I know a lot of you folks had even reached out on LinkedIn before saying, "Hey, how do I improve my networking game, etc." So we'll talk about that here. This is really a critical piece of how our system works, and this truly is because there's a supply-demand imbalance, right? So there's lots and lots of students who want to get into these careers, and it's really hard for us on the firm side to assess, all right, how does this candidate differ from this other candidate? Because A, recruiting cycles are so early, but also B, because there's just so much supply and demand. So the onus is on you all to make good recruiting impressions and relationships through the process. And we'll speak about that in a second. We on the Elevate side are making this a lot easier. We're just trying to make everything so meritocratic. We're trying to make everything sort of, much more, accessible and diversified. Obviously, we're working with the firms on that, but generally, recruiting, networking is really important. And then finally, interviewing, right? Once you get there, interviewing is also, how you come across in any non-formal conversations with people, right? So how you how you have a conversation with a fourth year, how you have a conversation with a first year analyst, even if it's not an interview, I would treat every one of those conversations as an interview, right? So how do you position yourself? How do you position your interests? How do you position your passions? And how do you position sort of your candidacy? All those become really, really important. Okay, so I'll just do this quickly and then we'll pause and take any questions. So what are firms looking for? It's a combination of sort of 6 or 7 things. I know this is a lot, but this is sort of, we went and our team, I think we went out to about 50 or so bankers, like associates, VP level folks, and said, all right, when you're in an interview, what are the 7 or 8 things that you're assessing? Because you don't really see this in interview guides or whatever, right? So, what are the things that you really are assessing in a candidate? And to me, I think this was, when we analyze the results, so this is kind of the 7 or 8 things that really stood out. One is analytical ability, right? You don't have to have been like, oh, I've been interested in finance since I was, in middle school. Like, that's not what we necessarily want to hear, but we want to, we'll ask you, hey, what's one of the more challenging problems that you've solved? Or, what are one of the things that you've thought about differently than other people? And we want to see that you're able to think through something you've done and explain it in the right way. By the way, these are not like we're asking you these questions. These are going to be a series of questions we'll ask in an interview that will help check the box on all of these points, right? So you can use your educational stories, you can use your internship stories, you can use your leadership stories, whatever it is. The second area obviously is technical acumen, right? So can you just demonstrate to me, whether it's via your, work that you've done in the industry research you work on, being part of CFIG, whatever it is, that you have had either an interest or an exposure to technical quantitative side. The third huge thing, probably the number one thing when we know in sort of banking, is teamwork. So has this individual shown the ability to excel as an individual contributor while being in a high pressure environment? So roles at clubs, so on and so forth. We'll get to this in a second. Leadership drive initiative. Again, what drives a candidate? I hit on this earlier, but we want to see passion. We want to see what is the self-started nature here, because in the real world, this is the biggest area of transition that all of analysts see. Once they go from school to the real world, even as a summer intern, there's no answer key. Okay. There's no like right or wrong answer. You got to figure it out. Right. So, and you're given they say, hey, we're going to pitch this company tomorrow, build a financial model. Like, they're giving you that problem because there is no solution. No one's done that yet. So you have to do it. Right. So I think that's the biggest thing that we want to see is, can you take the drive and initiative to do that? Obviously, I think character, Overcoming weaknesses, failures. I think self-awareness is really important. Interest in finance, again, we'll get to this later. Interest in markets. I think this is an area where a lot of our students fall short, is they come in, they kind of memorize all the answers, but they're not able to really talk through why are the markets moving? Like, we had a great update just a few minutes ago, but, if you had an interview today, can you talk me through why are the markets doing what they're doing and what is your view on it, right? So I think it's important to kind of have that view. And to do that, I encourage you all to start reading the Wall Street Journal or Deal Book on a daily basis now, such that when you get to an interview, it doesn't feel like it's foreign, it's like Greek or something to you guys. Curiosity about business. I love this question because I will ask you guys, okay, you say you're interested in healthcare. Tell me a business model that you find really interesting in healthcare and talk me through that. So really helping us understand how you think as an individual. And then finally, communication skills. I think, look, the biggest thing I think that helps people successful early on in their careers, their ability to communicate with precision. And so these are the things we're looking for, folks. So I kind of given you sort of a little bit of a cheat sheet on how you should be thinking about preparing your own answers, right, when it comes to these interviews and so on. Resume building, we'll get back to in a second. Networking, I think we'll get to this in a second. So let me do this. There's obviously a few more slides here, but I would like to we have 70 folks here. So I want to make sure we have plenty of time to answer people's questions that they have, etc. So let me just pause from the presentation and take any questions that folks might have on these topics. Feel free, by the way. I'm like I said, I'm not here in like a recruiting capacity, right? So we're here in sort of a educational capacity. So, feel free to sort of ask your questions as you guys have them. Okay. So, and you can actually ask them live if you'd like, on voice or video. But let's start with Jin's question on how would recruiting for FT be different in terms of preparation. Okay, I assume this person is asking about, they did a summer internship already, and then they're recruiting for something full-time, like something that's different or something. So it's gonna be similar in that, you're gonna have to present your story like, hey, I am X, Y, and Z. This is what I'm doing in college. This is where I did my summer internship. But I think we're gonna want to know more from you guys around, okay, cool. So we'll get to these. So that we want to know more about what is your summer internship experience like? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? Why are you now switching from where you were to now? Sort of give us sort of some reasons. And that's a really tough question, right? Because there could be multiple reasons. One could be, wasn't quite what you thought it was going to be. It could be, hey, I want to kind of go and kind of get a better job. It could be, I didn't get an internship, return offer, like whatever those reasons are. So my advice, that's going to be the core, I'll be honest, of the interviews of like why you're not going back to where you were and et cetera, et cetera. So my advice for anyone who's going through sort of job A to job B is don't focus on what were the shortcomings of the other job. That makes you sound very negative. Like, hey, I worked in consulting this summer, but I want to go into investment banking because I just felt like consulting wasn't, complex enough, or I felt like, I wasn't doing enough of this. That A is a very negative answer. And B, it tells me why you don't like consulting, but it doesn't tell me why you like banking. So I would actually focus all your energy on saying, hey, I did this in consulting. I learned how to deal with client environments. I learned how to work on complex problems. However, what I realized that I really, really want to get exposure to transactions. And that's why I'm interviewing for the banking job, right? So my advice to anyone who's going any type of lateraling or any type of, going to a different job, focus less on why you didn't like the job before and focus more on why, because you were successful or learned a lot in that prior job, now you're ready to tackle this job, right? So does that make sense to the person that asked this question? And then I think I would really also do a lot of homework, right? Preparation in these things are much more important. Let's say you're going recruiting for a private equity fund. Like the week before, you should be looking at all of their portfolio companies, making a list of like every single investment that they have, thinking about how they think about it. Because a lot these days, all this information is readily available to you guys. So I think the biggest thing you could do is prepare and really have a cogent answer of like, why that firm, why that fund? Because when you're going full time, we sort of expect you guys to figure this out a little bit more than maybe when you were an intern. So that's my sort of general advice to the person who'd asked. kind of
Do you
recruiting.
mind if I follow up a little bit?
Yeah, please. Man, yes.
Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing all these tips. They're definitely really useful. I'm also wondering that because I know that some of the firms, they start recruiting for full-time pretty early on, like maybe in June. So how does that so which means I wouldn't be able to talk about my summer internship experience yet. And also it would be really difficult to answer the question of why do I want to switch, for example, if I do investment banking and I want to switch to private equity for full-time. So how do I answer why do I want to switch?
Okay. Juman, you can message me on LinkedIn afterwards. This is a very nuanced answer because it's particularly I want to know what you're doing, or if it's your case, but whatever. I want to know a little bit more about this. But generally, my advice would be, yes, I think recruiting is early. I wouldn't say as if you're going into the summer, I wouldn't say it happens before the summer per se. I know some firms do this, and PE definitely does this. I think you can say, look, there's three things. Number one, have a thoughtful thought process behind the steps that you're taking, right? I intentionally went into, I'm just giving examples, I don't know exactly your situation, but I thoughtfully went into banking this summer to get, this set of skills, and this is why I'm going to the place that I'm doing. However, that said, I am fully targeting private equity for my full time because I wanted to get this set of experiences. But all in all, I know that when I want to graduate, I want to go into private equity or growth equity for X, Y, and Z reasons. I really want to be an investor. This thing, the idea of investing in companies early on in my career really excites me. I think I'll be good at it for X, Y, and Z reasons, et cetera. So the first thing, if you don't have sort of experience to talk about, make sure you show us that you're being very thoughtful, methodical. You're just not there because it sounds cool. Oh, Warburg Pincus sounds exciting. I want to show up here. I think you have to say, okay, I'm really excited about this particular opportunity, and it's a very thoughtful way I've designed my career. That's the first thing. The second thing you can say is, look, I spent a lot of work researching, private equity or growth equity. And this is why that's exciting to me. And this is kind of why I like the firm that you're at. So this preparation point. So again, make it about the firm that you're joining and less about, look, I know where I'm going to go. I'm going to get some reasonable experiences, but this is why this other thing that I'm doing will be even more exciting for me. And then thirdly, I think you can sort of, if it's in the process, the timing, they know the timing, you know what I mean? They are going in June. They don't expect you to sort of have done the summer internship already. So I would sort of give yourself a little bit of slack, but make sure though you are well-versed in the interview side, right? So make sure you can, though you don't have that skill set yet, make sure you've already built the modeling skill set or whatever they might expect you to know for the internship. So that'd be the third thing. Make sure you're still kind of well-rounded in the questions that they're going to ask you. Jinwan, does that make sense on that point?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, you're absolutely welcome. There's been a bunch more questions, and I think a few people had asked about the thing. I just shared the YouTube, the LinkedIn, and the IG thing, so I hope it works. You guys should go and definitely you can follow all that stuff and let us know any feedback, I suppose. Okay, Anna, I will take you, and then if other folks are asking these text questions or personal messaging me, unless it's super anonymous, I would love it if you can just ask the audience because I'm sure other people have the same questions. But if it's super anonymous, just let me know it's anonymous. But yeah, Anna, you're next.
Hi, I have two questions. First, I wanted to know how much an individual's major plays into this recruiting process, and if I don't know, one major is better than another. And then my second question is, I know you mentioned that these recruiting processes are often ladders. So if one were to somehow not get in on that first rung, is it still possible to come in later, honest
Absolutely.
answer?
Yeah, absolutely. So, oh, okay. So I will get some of you guys have a couple funny questions, so I will save those also. Okay, Anna, so first question around your major. Look, I think when I look at our Elevate platform and, kind of when I see, and even when I was sort of on the recruiting side at GS, I would say, we have kind of data points on 100 clubs, right, across these top 30, 35 universities. I would say about 60% of them are some version of economics, finance, business, financial, engineering, those types of majors. Okay, so those types of majors. I would say about 30 to 40% of them are liberal arts majors, philosophy majors, and I use those examples because we've seen a lot of those folks. Look, I think we have to be upfront with what our strengths and weaknesses are. So if you are a major that sort of if you're sort of a hardcore business major, you have to convince us that you are an individual that can think about things in a strategic way, kind of think about things in a holistic way, and a lot of these soft skills that maybe you're not picking up as a finance major. So you sort of have to show us that you can understand companies in that sense, or be a good team player, or think about things in a strategic, high level way. However, if you are a non-finance major, I think certainly, like I said, 40%, which is, and by the way, we're also like, I would say it's a little bit more veered towards business majors because by virtue of all the clubs that we're partnered with. So maybe there's a little bit of sort of, data, analysis there that we can think about. But I would say, look, certainly one is presenting a case of why we're all picking majors when we're 17, 18, 19 years old. There's no way I'm gonna, we're not gonna hold you guys, per se, like anything against you that you picked a major. And it actually is not that way. A lot of people who are senior also in the street have done all the different types of majors. There's a sort of misconception that you have to do this. However, I think, Anna, if you are a non sort of finance major, it's important for you to demonstrate your interest as well as, your knowledge, as well as, I wouldn't call it expertise, but sort of, ease of use, I guess, or ease of understanding with the financial market. So ways to do that, right? Number one, part of CFIG, you can say, hey, like, I'm in this group, or even if it's not CFIG, whatever group you're deciding to be part of, say, hey, this is how what I'm doing to sort of improve both my financial, vocabulary, as well as sort of the knowledge of the markets. Number two, these are the things I'm doing outside of it, right? So think about it from a position. We want to hire people who are genuinely interested in the job, right? So what are ways you can demonstrate to us that you're interested in these careers, right? So if you're interested in private equity, right, go and sort of, think about, hey, I spend a lot of time analyzing these markets, and put that on your resume, or get an internship sort of in that space, even if it's for your internship. Or whatever it is, to sort of demonstrate and bridge a gap for us that, hey, this person is just not here because we're Morgan Stanley, or we're Goldman Sachs, or we're KKR, but we're here because they genuinely understand what their job is. So the first thing is extracurriculars. Number two is, internships, or other ways you can demonstrate your, projects, so on and so forth. Number three is just building your own skill set, right? Building your own knowledge. So keeping up on like Deal Book every single day, and knowing what's happening in the news, so that when you have conversations, be like, yes, I'm an art history major. However, I religiously read, the Financial Times or whatever, and I know everything that's going on in the healthcare space. I know everything that's going on here, and et cetera. And you convinced us that, hey, all right, this person is very multidimensional. And I picked art history because I just have a passion for art history. I'm also taking a couple business classes, blah, blah, blah. So it wouldn't hold you back, Anna, at all, but you have to be aware that it does expose you to some weaknesses. And let's now figure out how to overcome those perceived weaknesses and come off as strength. So that's my first point on your question. The second question was around, I believe was around, if you somehow missed the boat on sort of the first go around. Look, absolutely, right? I'll kind of give you an example. So I graduated from a non-target undergrad. I went to Chicago from a business school earlier in my career. But when I graduated, I had a job at a New York investment bank. I was like super excited. And then the financial crisis happened. So I basically got my offer rescinded because the entire division, like our hedge fund and our sales and trading division, shut down because of the Lehman and the Bear Stearns crisis. So I was sitting here being like, oh my God, I worked so hard to get this internship. And like, now I'm a senior year of my college. Like, what do I do now? So again, this is just an example. Like, for instance, the speaker we're going to have on Saturday, one of the guest guys, he started his career in like a community college or something like that. So my point to you all is, if you, for some reason, are not successful, the majority of you will be successful because you're part of this. And success is determined in different ways. Success doesn't mean you all need to go work at this one firm or these two firms. It sort of depends on, hey, I'm targeting this internship or this job that I'm really excited about, or this industry. Can I get an internship in that industry and sort of get my foot in the door? Like, that's sort of one metric of success. Sure, you can always go to the best and the best and the best, and that's fine. But make sure, you start with that as your metric for success. But if for some reason you don't get there, guess what? You have 2 full years to sort of figure out how to take what you work on, or 1 full year, or even 0 full years when you graduate, to do that. To sort of do, and I think we can have that conversation at that point, but that sort of involves really digging in and building your industry knowledge, really digging in, being more focused. Hey, okay, I was very generalist last time. Let me focus on technology and healthcare and really build my skill set around that. And then let me do a networking in a more streamlined way. Trust me, especially if you're going to summer internships, a lot of banks come back and interview people to Jinwen's question, like in the spring or the summer of your, after your junior year, et cetera. So it's not really, you don't need to get alarmed or anything like that. Yes, you'll be a little bit behind the 8 ball because, most of banks do convert and PE firms and consulting firms convert out of their summers, but by no means is it anything. In fact, I think some of my strongest, we do these panels all the time with our analysts and associates, and a lot of those people on those panels, didn't get a summer, or some people didn't get a summer. And why I think they actually benefited from that is they continue to network throughout their junior year, throughout the senior year. And guess what? Now that they're, now they're working at these investment banks, their network is way stronger than maybe that individual who got a summer internship and didn't network the next 2 years, right? So my point to you is, try to use it to your advantage. Try to sort of, whatever your situation is, do the best you can in that situation. And if you do happen to not achieve the full level of success you consider, let's keep going, right? There's no end to this. And I think you have to sort of put those parameters around yourself and sort of keep pushing yourself to do that, within reason. So I think that's my answer, Anna, on the second point. So absolutely, don't stress about it. Focus on your current process. And if for some reason that doesn't work out, you can reach out to me and we'll help you on the other end. Okay, so all right, let's keep going. There was a bunch more questions. Megan, you had a question, I think, and then Emerson, and then Taj, and then Debbie. We can go with those questions.
Yeah, sure. So mine was actually pretty similar. So I think you gave a lot of really great advice. But being at Columbia, we don't have an undergraduate business school. So there are certain classes like financial accounting that, we don't have access to. Do you think that we are at a disadvantage as to like some of our peers who are applying to the same positions who may have taken those courses? And is there any way that we can kind of compensate for this lack of experience?
Yeah, good question, Megan. I think I get this a lot at Columbia. I get it a lot of sort of at Yale and Princeton and some of these other, great universities, but who don't have sort of this, I can think of maybe 4 or 5 of our universities who really have, actual finance, undergrads. No, so one thing is, in some sense, look, you're not competing against each other. That's not how I think about it. You guys are I expect you all to be working together on interview prep, on all these things. So find peers amongst yourself who can help you achieve your own success here. However, most of these banks or consulting firms or PE firms have school-specific recruiting teams for Columbia. So they are usually like the gatekeepers of some of these offers. So when kind of taking you guys behind the scenes, we'd have so let's say we get 300 resumes from a certain school like Columbia. One of our speakers actually from Centerview and came, and they were a Columbia alum, and they kind of explained the whole process in one of our videos. I'm sure you guys can find it. But effectively, the point was, and he was leading kind of Centerview Columbia recruiting, or actually at Goldman as well. And he kind of it was the same thing for other schools, like I did for Chicago and so on. So I think it's very similar. You get a resume pack about 300 people, right? So the first sort of like the first filtration process happens with the Columbia recruiting team. Okay, so the Columbia recruiting team goes through and identifies, hey, of these 300 resumes, like how many, or let's say we have spots for 40 or 50 or whatever interview spots for Columbia first rounds, or how many higher reviews we're going to give, or whatever it is, or maybe it's a little bit more than that since it's higher reviews now, but let's say it's like 100, they sort of do the first line of defense against that. So Megan, to your question, it doesn't really put you at necessarily disadvantage because all of your peers aren't really like have that finance background since you don't go to school. However, there's things that I mentioned earlier that you can actually do that will help you demonstrate that. So short answer to your question is no. The way you can absolutely overcome that is by networking, demonstrating in those conversations what you're interested in in these careers, and then what you're doing to kind of demonstrate that interest, whether it's industry, whether it's group, et cetera. So absolutely not. Certain other Ivies or certain other schools sort of have even less of a business sort of background, yet they're sort of, reasonably successful. So you just have to play with sort of cards you have dealt, and then really put yourself in a position where that says, hey, despite that, I've done all these things. I'm part of CFIG. I'm part of these things. I'm doing all these things. That's because I'm actually interested in this and I want to have a career in this. So that's sort of my short answer to your question, Megan. Hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple more questions here. So let's keep going with the questions. Folks that want to raise their hands, or people that direct message me that want to ask stuff. So let me spend a minute actually while we're here on some of the other things I think you guys should really know as we're going through the process. And let me know, shoot, 1 second. Let's talk about, just so I know in the audience, can people just raise your hands if possible in this Zoom thing, if you guys are able. How many second years do we have? I think when I looked at the stats before the session, I think we had a good amount. Okay, so all right, just from the people who are raising their hands, I think if it's, okay, so I do think from the stats that I looked at, there was probably 60% of the audience. So that's helpful, guys. And how many sort of first years do I have in the audience? Okay, cool. So maybe about half of that. And then, okay, yep. And how many sort of, I guess I will do, so it's about, looks like about 40% second years, about 30% first years, and 30% other stuff. So I'll try to make this, these slides pretty generic, but as it comes to this, one of the questions I just got asked was, oh shoot. Can you guys see this again? Because it keeps, yeah, you can see it. Yes. Okay, cool. So resume building, someone just asked me this question in direct message, so I'll try to hit on this. The second thing I talked about, right? The first thing was sort of all the inflection points. The second thing I wanted to get to is resume building. So whether you like it or not, your resume, and increasingly these days your LinkedIn profile, is sort of the first line of defense, right? In terms of what people see and what they do. So I think you should really focus on, accumulating a set of experiences that, there's 3 or 4 things I would do. Number one, no matter where you are, I would sort of follow the traditional format, right? So education, experience, projects, extracurricular, right? Something like that. And then obviously as you go on, become more senior in college, you will have the experience section will build out, and then the other stuff will reduce. But in every single thing that you do, think about like thoughtful ways, like CFIG, great thing. So you should actually have a separate bullet on there saying, member of CFIG, or, whatever, board member, whatever your positions are, largest undergrad finance club on campus. Obviously the Columbia people already know that. And then sort of talk about 1 or 2 things that you've done there, attend weekly sessions, blah, blah, blah. So the more you can people can look at your resume and be like, okay, this person is taking an interest, all the stuff that we just talked about, the better. In your experience side, look, a lot of our first years, obviously you don't have any experience yet. And that's kind of but that's the question here. But second years, whatever you did for the summer, let's put it a bullet. Say, hey, I was a business analyst intern or business ops intern at, this startup, or I was doing this X, Y, and Z, and whatever you did for the summer, put it in and put the bullets in a way that tells me, hey, I, worked on analytics for X, Y, and Z project, presented this presentation to the C-level, C-suite, or, worked on a team of 10 people where I, managed X, Y, and Z responsibilities. So as much as you can make these action-oriented bullets of what you did, as opposed to saying things like, something like, much more description based, right? A lot of people write descriptions that that are less action oriented. So I want you guys to put your bullets as very action oriented bullets, and that's what people see. And when I look at resumes, and when I see professionals look at resumes, as much as you guys have spent 10 hours doing a resume, professionals probably spend 60 to 90 seconds on each resume, because we're looking through like 300 resumes, right? So make sure when I look to the left of your resume, they're all action verbs, right? So, build financial model, or led this work stream, or worked with this, presented to C-suite. So that attracts my attention right away, that this is an action verb. This is what people have done. The second thing is, I like to see a little bit of especially for our early on people. So if you're part of some like a cappella group, or if you're part of some markets group, or if you're part of some nonprofit consulting group, just put it on there and speak about the things you've done on that. So that should fill out your experience in terms of your section. And then include any relevant projects that you feel like if you've done on CFIG or other things, let's put it on there. Obviously, as you become more senior, some of those things will cycle out and it'll be replaced with more realistic stuff. That's what I would say on resume building. Folks have questions, we can talk about that. Okay, so let's really quickly spend a minute on interviewing. And I think it's a little bit advanced for folks right now, but trust me, in 2 months, you'll be at this step in terms of like interviewing for these firms. I would break these out into 3 types of interviews. Number 1, behavioral, number 2, technical, and number 2, situational. Again, we're not doing an interview workshop today. We've had plenty of those. We will have plenty of those.
There's more healthcare data available.
This thing comes on. As the interview season like goes forward. But generally, I just wanted to list out the 8 to 9 of the most common behavioral questions that you all will be getting regardless of what firm or what bank you interview at. So tell me about yourself. This is really important. Even right now, if I cold called one of you, I would expect you to give me a 90-second story of what brings you here. Like, why are we having this conversation? So I'm gonna put you on the spot, Anna, just to ask a question. I'm Anna. I'm an X, Y, and Z year at Columbia. I am majoring in X, Y, and Z. I'm majoring in, philosophy. I don't know exactly what you're majoring in, but I'm majoring in philosophy. I'm originally from X, Y, and Z, or wherever. At Columbia, I've become very interested in the financial markets and finance in general. I'm part of the CFIG group where I do blah, blah, blah. And I'm really, really interested as a career in investment banking because, I want to really get exposure to all these industries. And I work in a transaction environment that helps me solve clients' problems in a business and financial sense. And that's why I'm here. I'm very interested in Goldman Sachs for X, Y, and Z reasons. So that's all that is, right? It's nothing more than that. So tell me about yourself. Why are you here? Why should we be talking to you? And why are you talking to us, right? So that's all that is. Again, you should make sure you highlight the things, right? So if some of you are leadership, you can say, hey, I'm a leader at CFIG, which is the largest thing, and I'm doing X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 blah. I've done this internship before. So again, just build that story around yourself. The other things we won't have time to get into: strengths, weaknesses, feedback, proud of accomplishments, difficulty working situations, failure you've had, blah, 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 blah. You guys can read the screen. We're going to have interview workshops on Elevate for all of our schools together in a month or 2. So we'll really hit into these things. But the key here is come up with 5 or 6 really good stories. Hey, in high school, my tennis team really stunk. So I was a captain and we had to bring everyone together and really compete and bring up morale and X, Y, and Z. That's a great example of teamwork. The example I'm trying to make here is that they all don't have to be, hey, I was an investment banker in high school. Like, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for 5 to 6 stories that encompass all of these things about you that I'm like, okay, cool. I want to work with Anna. I want to work with Megan. I want to work with, et cetera, right? So I think that is what we're trying to get to here. So you can say, hey, I did this in high school. This is what I'm part of here. I'm part of this nonprofit consulting group where I have to work with a lot of my peers. And maybe the answer is, tell me about a challenging team situation. You'd be like, hey, you know what? One of my peers didn't really carry their weight. I had to do X, Y, and Z. There's examples that you guys can use on all these examples. Again, I don't want this to be an interview workshop, but I'm giving you guys some advice on some of the stuff. Finance, technical, really don't worry about this right now. Like, you will do this when you get to the interviews stage, not to be stressed out about right now, but really just the questions I'm trying to get at is, why finance? Why will you be a good analyst? What are you tracking in the market? Deals, industries, overall markets? Why me? Why our firm? And then sort of technical questions. Like, the team will share with you some PDFs and stuff that they have about technical questions. This is not that hard. Please don't stress out about this. The behavioral and situationals are a lot harder. And higher views, again, we won't get into this now. I don't think anyone of you are in the higher view stage yet. Technicals, we won't get to this stuff yet. Let me pause again. I wanted to get to sort of some more questions that people might have had. Could you speak a little bit on PE analyst experience versus classic IBD routes out of college, pros and cons in terms of actual development, technical skills development? Many PE programs are still in trial phase, but yeah, okay. So you know what? Shoot, Peter had a question, his hand's up. Peter, can I just take this question and then I'll take you in a second? So this question is around PE analysts. Okay, so I cannot do this topic justice in 10 minutes or 2 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever we have. Go back, guys, and we have literally like hundreds of videos from PE associates and analysts on the Elevate website, you can pick your firm, go to Blackstone, Centerbridge, Apollo, KKR, whatever firm you want to get, or even Warburg, or even smaller firms, right? Go in there and really hear from people on why they decided to go into private equity versus, venture capital or growth equity or hedge funds, et cetera. So again, we're having a PE panel in maybe a month or so. We're going to have on 6 or 7 PE professionals. You can ask them that same question there as well. These are all my mentees from last couple of years of being in banking and through Elevate. But my point is, everyone has a different reason for going into PE. My general view on private equity is it's completely different, right? So investment banking, the job and sort of the day-to-day is a little more, similar, I suppose, because you're kind of doing a lot of the analytical work. But actually, before I even jump into this and before we lose people, can I make a request? My team has set up a Trustpilot for us. So again, this is just to gather testimonials. So if you guys had a good session today, just kind of go over there and leave. I think we're asking people to leave a 5-star review, whatever you want, go in there, leave a 5-star review. If you did, this is if you did, but it helps us sort of, I think, as we kind of go out and expand the Elevate platform. So it's just a request from my team. So it's totally optional. You don't have to do it if you don't want, but I would love it if you can. Again, you can write about what you learned from the session or whatever. So before we lose a lot of people at 9 p.m., I want to just mention that. But I think my general thoughts on private equity, folks, is yes, a lot of programs, there's maybe 4 or 5 programs that are more established in terms of having been around, right, for more than 2 to 3 years, because a lot of these programs are a lot newer. One thing I would recommend and suggest you all to do is do diligence up front now on, if there's, okay, I will get to this in a section. I would sort of do your diligence now on why you may want to do private equity versus investment banking. The reason why a lot of people go into investment banking or consulting is they build a very standardized skill set of deals, transactions, et cetera. And it's a very well-known brand when you come out. Hey, you've done 2 years in banking or consulting. I know that you were able to handle a lot of these challenges, et cetera. One of the upsides of PE might be that you get to go to the buy side right away. But one of the downsides is you don't have the structured training program that you will in banking and the structured sort of experience and reps that you're getting in banking. There's other ones as well. I'd say sort of figure out if you really, really, really want to do buy side. I always advise our students, you don't necessarily need to wait 2 years to go into banking to do that, but know that one of the main drawbacks is you may not get that structured program. You may not have that, certainly the brand value. People still know a lot of investment banks, are less familiar with some of the PE firms, even though they're really good PE firms in terms of, their brand, I suppose, or their experience. That could change in a couple of years. Recently we've seen a lot of interest from growth equity, VC, and also fintech. So again, if you're at all interested in sort of the buy side, I would explore all of those, not just private equity. But look, PE is just also a lot harder to get into. I'd say whereas banking, I'd say that the acceptance rates for PE, because they're smaller programs, is probably somewhere like 25% of the acceptance rate for banking. So it's just sort of a numbers game. But even when you go to PE, I would expect you to tell me why and be prepared for that. And the PE interviews are very different. There'll be a little bit more around what industries are you interested in. There'll be less around valuation. There'll be more on case studies and et cetera. So if you have more questions on PE, first place, I would check out all the free videos. If you still have questions, come to me and then you can do the training stuff. Okay, so let me take these questions for Peter Gordon. You're up, and then I'll take some of these other questions. I know there's so many questions and I'm so sorry if I don't get to your question. Do please ping me on LinkedIn. I will try my best to respond to you in a equitable time frame. But I also really, really encourage you all to take advantage of I did not expect when I started Elevate 2 years ago to be this much demand for, learning and really excelling in your career. And I really, truly think, I want you all to be successful because A, you'll be successful, but B, I want you to come back in 2 years and guide my next generation of Columbia and, Penn and Chicago and Georgetown and blah, blah, blah people. So you'll see all of our panelists in every event we've had are all my student leaders or students from years past. And so I want to really set a tone in this industry of personal excellence, but also one of paying it forward to the next generation. So that's why we do this stuff. So my point is, take advantage of literally so many resources we have. And if you still have questions, do reach out, don't hesitate. I just know that I get a lot of messages, so it's hard for me to respond to all of them, but I will do my best. So that's to anyone who hasn't had a chance to ask their questions yet. But Pete, your turn.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ravi. I've really enjoyed your advice, and I have a two-parter for you, more towards the networking slash mentorship. So something that I've kind of struggled with in this area is kind of understanding what the professional, like the other person that I'm interacting, gets from it. Because obviously, I mean, like any one of us have so much to gain in terms of like the advice and like life skills and interactions we can learn from this professional. But what does the professional have to gain with interacting with us? And second question is, what would be like the proper follow-up that's expected? Are you supposed to keep like constant communication? You talk with this person like once a year, once every month? Like how is it expected for us to keep the conversation going?
Okay, so I will answer both these, but we're going to get into this a lot more on Saturday with sort of the Goldman guys, and they're going to tell us about what they want to see. So the first question around why do professionals want to network with you? One is, look, we're also trying to hire the best talent that we can at these different firms, right? So in order to build a really good firm, this is what I tell all of our firms who are partnered with us on recruiting, initiatives on the Elevate side is, look, it's not just about having one event a year and just showing up and everyone. I think it's to have interactions with individuals and know that, that they're interested, then you're interested, and that's what keeps kind of the talent pipeline going. So look, I think I wouldn't stress out as much about what is the person getting out of this, because they obviously, out of their genuineness, goodness of their heart, or out of their willingness, wanting to recruit the top talent, or because they sit on the recruiting team and their MD is telling them, hey, we need to get more talent from Columbia, whatever their reasons are, they're taking this call with you, right? So I think so yes, it's one sense to be very appreciative and thankful for people's time, because at the end of the day, look, our day-to-days are very busy. So because if we're devoting students 10, 15, 20 minutes of time on Zoom, that means we're not, talking to clients, or that means we're not kind of doing other stuff. So absolutely, I agree with you, Pete, in that, Peter, in that, like, you have to be very appreciative of their time, but I think you can sort of trudge the line a little bit between being too deferential. You should be like, hey, I really, if it was you and me, right, and I was kind of on the recruiting team, you should be like, hey, Kaushik, I really appreciate your time. I know you must be really busy, so I appreciate you taking the time in your day to speak to me. I really enjoy kind of learning about your career over LinkedIn, and I really want to use this time to help, help learn a little bit more about your journey, but also tell you a little about myself and why I'm interested in this. So that would be a great intro to sort of what you do here, and then go in. Though the best way to be respectful and appreciative of people's time is to not waste time, which means go in prepared with questions that are good and sort of thought out. Don't go into informational, just being like, oh, tell me about what you've done at Goldman. I'm like, read my LinkedIn, if you want, right? So I think you got to be like, you have to ask more thoughtful questions, because you want them to walk out of there being like, okay, Peter, Anna, Megan, all these people, I enjoy talking to this person. I want them to be on my team, right? You want them to walk out of there having that feeling. So go in there being like, hey, I noticed you're working in healthcare. I really like the healthcare industry for X, Y, and reasons. What is your advice for someone who's looking to break into healthcare? I've been following these types of trends in the space. Good question. Or, hey, I'd love to hear about one of the deals you worked on, et cetera. Again, don't make this super hardo, right? You don't have to be like, oh, tell me about this deal, then tell me about this deal, and tell me about this deal. Just generically, like, get to know them, then be like, hey, this is kind of all the things I'm working on. I really, my number one focus is to break into this. I really like JP Morgan Healthcare. I'm just throwing names out here, but I really like JP Morgan Healthcare because the people I've met here have been really awesome. So I would love the opportunity to keep in touch with you post this conversation and just give you, periodic updates and sort of maybe get your advice as this thing goes on. So that kind of leads me to your follow-up question on kind of how do you design these follow-ups? I think, look, anyone you've spoken to, you should end the call with two things. Number one, hey, I really appreciated the time that you've taken out today to kind of talk to me. I would be really grateful, or it would be really awesome if I could just keep tabs with you as someone who I've learned a lot from already on how my recruiting process is going, and just give you periodic updates as I go through the process, if you don't mind. There's no way they're going to say no to that. Okay. So I think that's now your excuse to start like following up with them and keeping like in the loop. Again, we'll talk about follow-ups in a second, and you don't have to nutso on the follow-up. Like, you don't have to send them a follow-up every week. So that's the first thing. And the second thing I would ask is, hey, is there anyone else on the team, maybe an analyst or an associate, that I can speak to just get a better sense of like the culture, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. So, I think if you've made a good impression, they're going to say, hey, awesome, let me just ask a couple people and let me get back to you on sort of, who you can talk to, right? So then right after you get off the call, in the next hour or so, when it's fresh, email them saying, hey, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And, like I mentioned, I will definitely keep you in, especially if they're Columbia alumni, they'll want to keep in touch with you and et cetera. And then what I would do is just send them every month, or depending on how recruiting is going. Like if it's going very, very urgent, fast, you can kind of give them more updates. If you're getting more interviews, like let's say you're getting an interview from your, choice 2 bank, but you're really interested in choice 1 bank, which they are, be like, hey, I just want to let you know that I've used up I'm using a lot of the advice that you gave me. And now I have an interview with this firm, again, wouldn't do that for first rounds, but maybe let's say you're a super day, final round interview, you say, I have a super day here, it's going really well. That said, I really, really still interested in your bank. Like, is there, I would love to see if there's any way to accelerate the process. So if you've kept in touch with people along the way, then it's easier to ask them of those things. Like if you haven't kept in touch with people, it's really hard to come out 3 months later and be like, hey, can I get an accelerated interview? They're going to be like, no way, who are you, right? So I think just keeping that relationship going. And frankly, in your email, you can include articles like, hey, I know you're working on this space. Like I've been researching this space since our conversation. I noticed these 3 deals that are going on. What do you think about this? Or here's what I think about these deals. Next time we chat, I'd love to go into this, right? Kind of keeping a mix of your vibe with that person and kind of following up in that same vibe is important, right? If they were really genuinely helpful, tell them how they're helpful. If there's someone who's a super industry honcho, send them some industry stuff. But your goal, guys and girls and team on the calls in this process is to establish 1 or 2 people that will go to bat for you in the recruiting process. Okay, so let's say to the Columbia team, I want to be like, hey, I had a great conversation with Peter. I think he has his stuff together. He's really, really, humble, and he's kind of a good team player, and he's pretty accomplished in things that he's done. Let us include him in the process, right? So that's kind of what you want of them, of you. And then, and guess what? There's like, if you just think banking, there's like 20 banks out there, right? Let's say as an example, you're not going to have amazing relationships with 20 banks, let alone 10 banks, right? So figure out where you're having strengths and just really keep organized around this process. Again, we'll go through this a little bit more on Saturday, but keeping yourself organized around this process. Who have I spoken to? Who have I not spoken to? Where am I getting traction? Where am I not getting traction? Why am I getting traction? It's just really important that you all can do through this process that helps you. Again, that's a skill, that's a life skill. Like networking is a life skill, which is what I tell anyone. For Finect, we have like 1,000-person wait list because people want to network. I think this idea of networking is like a lost art, and it's something you're going to be doing your entire career. So use this as a challenge to yourself to see how well you can become at a networking, building relationships. Again, networking is not like a transactional thing where Peter, I need a job from you, so I'm reaching out to you, and then I'm going to disappear for 3 years, right? I think it's sort of like, hey, how can I be additive to you? How can you be additive to me? And let's build a relationship going forward. So that's what networking is. Okay, we are like way past time. Is there any like burning questions that people have? And I have a board meeting in like 15 minutes to prep for, but anything that people have like burning desire questions we need to get off the chest now, or can you wait till Friday, Saturday, or other sessions? I'm also doing this thing because we have a lot of interest in this, where I'm going to be doing office hours with another professional. So they could be in banking, they could be in PE. We're going to try to do it every other Friday. It depends on my schedule. But the goal is like an AMA, you guys come on and say, hey, is this bullet on my resume look silly? Or like, how do I position this? Or I'm not getting any traction here, blah, blah, blah. You will be joining all these other universities. We're going to try to cap it at like 50 people because there's no point. Like this Saturday, we have 300 people, and that's a different audience. But the goal is to give you guys like more, interactions with professionals that we could just give you live feedback on. So anyway, look out for that. I think the first one is going to be the 4th of February. And then the 6th of February, we have the restructuring thing. So anyone who's interested in restructuring, highly recommend. It's going to be led by 2 of our all-star restructuring bankers, one at Evercore, one at Houlihan. So you should definitely check that out. There's a question that's being asked. Oh, it came in twice. Is there any discounts on Elevate Lab? Yeah, so look, guys, I'd say 90%, 95, 97% of Elevate is free. Like that's the point. The trainings are like nominally priced. And so we have 50% off discounts for all of our students. So if you're interested, I think it's like Elevate 200 or something like that. Or it's like New Year 200 or something. So I will send it in a follow-up email to everyone that signed up. If you're interested, we have one in banking, PE, and VC. they're all taught by like 20 different professionals, and they're like comprehensive, because as I've gone through trainings, there's just not many good trainings out there. So we wanted to come up with something. But again, you can get a lot of this info from the free stuff on our website. So if you want to get the training, get it. You don't have, that's up to you, but trust me, I think you'll be good if you just take the free stuff on the website. But if you really want more training, I guess you can get it. But that's on training. So I hope that's helpful for Vandita. Sorry, I didn't get your question. Michael, okay. I'm sorry, I did not get to some of these questions. That's totally my fault. Okay, so Megan, if there's no like burning, dying questions, I hope this has been helpful, folks. Like, I truly hope, from the bottom of my heart, this has been helpful for everyone here. I wish you tremendous luck and success. Try not to be so hard on ourselves through this process. Let's try to take an introspective approach, learn about ourselves, learn about each other, build your network. It doesn't matter where just like getting into Columbia was a goal for you all when you started in high school, but now that you're here, now you're like, how do I leverage the Columbia platform to become the best individual that I can be post, undergrad? I would take that same approach to your career. It's a long journey. It cannot seem that way at times where you're like really, really in the throes of things, but do the best you absolutely can in the journey that you are, wherever you are. But really do put your mind and heart into it, because this is a tough process. Take advantage of these resources, take advantage of all these sessions, etc. But you are all individually more than capable of being successful in whatever you guys want to do. But also, it doesn't end just because you go and work at a certain bank out of undergrad. That is the beginning of your career. That is not the end of your career. So I want you to be successful throughout your career. When you come to me, when you're in business school, when you come to me post that and tell me, hey, Kaushik, like what should I be doing now? That's the conversation that I want to be having with you guys. And so, yeah, so with that, I want to just sort of wish everyone best of luck here. I hope this has been helpful. Megan, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kaushik, for taking the time to share your insights. I think we can all agree that this has just been like the most insightful event. And to everyone here, we are hosting another event next week with some CVIC alums and current seniors who will be sharing their experiences with recruitment and then their past summer internships. So join us then. And thanks again for spending your Tuesday evening with us. And we hope to see you all next week. Have a good night.
Yeah, great. Great job, CVIC. Great job, Megan. Good job, Winston and team. Bye, guys. Talk to you soon. See you soon. Bye-bye.